Hey there, welcome to the next lesson in my course on creating 5-year financial models in Excel. If you haven't seen the previous videos, you can find links to them in the description below. And if you want to download the Excel files and follow along, you can do so on the first link in the description below. Now let's get back to Excel. In the previous section, we finalized our acquisition pipeline model. And in this section, we're going to focus on developing a model for a new service that we're launching that's supposed to provide uplift on top of the already existing revenue. I'm going to make a copy of the acquisition pipeline, put it over here, and I'm going to call it Minty Tools. It's a new service or product that we're launching. And the idea is that we already have this customer base and we want to leverage the existing customer base by providing additional services that we can charge for and therefore generate uplift on top of our existing revenue. I'm going to have a similar approach to what we did with acquisitions pipeline. Just going to grab everything here and remove it so I can start fresh. Okay, now let's add some space in our assumptions. And also let's clean up our income statement a bit. You don't need those. Just clean up everything and we're gonna relink it from scratch. Okay, let's start with the assumptions. So in order to calculate the uplift, we need to know what we're applying the uplift on top of. So the idea here is that we're taking our existing revenue and we are generating uplift on top of that. So we'll start with our existing revenue and we're going to link that to our core business summary. Grab it here, and the idea behind linking it to this is that way if we switch something off in our config file, it will be replicated here. Then apart from our core business revenue, we also want to add our Rockcode acquisition revenue. And we only want to add this from 2023 going forward, just to make sure that if we have switched to Proforma, this wouldn't flow through this new service, because even though Proforma View assumes that the Rockcode company was with us for the past years, we're still releasing this product today, and it wouldn't have had any effect in the past. We want to make sure that we also have the ability to turn Rockcode on or off. So I'm going to go to the config and I have the acquisition here. Just going to go to my Minty Tools and say if Rockcode acquisition, the config for 23 is equal to on, then give me Rockcode acquisitions revenue for 23. And otherwise, give me 0. Format that, copy it over to the side. Now, if I go to config and I decide, okay, we're not doing this acquisition, you see that there's no revenue coming in here and it won't get any uplift. Next, let's add our acquisitions pipeline. And similarly, we want to add it to our config. I'm going to copy this once more and just say acquisitions pipeline. So I can say here, if my config file for 23 is equal to on, grab the acquisitions pipeline revenue for 23. Otherwise, and I constantly forget those zeros, it should be 0. Now that you think about it, since we will be starting our uplift from calendar year 2023, it doesn't matter what we're selecting here because it won't get any uplift anyway. So just for consistency, we can put it like this. The next thing we want to look at is how are we generating the uplift. So there are two ways that we will be generating uplift. First, it's going to be the internal market share, the mix. And what I mean by this is we're going to be looking at what percentage of our customer base, of our revenue base, will be using our new service, and we'll be growing this over time. And on the other hand, we'll also be growing the dollars per client that we can generate from implementing the new service. So let's say here, year one share of revenue, and this is going to be 10%. What we mean here is that in the first year, only 10% of our revenue generating customer base will get the new service, they'll use it, and they'll generate uplift for us. So we need to calculate a ramp for that, and our ramp on how we'll expand this internal mix is going to be, we're going to grow it to 50%, then 100, 150, 200, and 250%. And those are, again, based on your professional judgment and plans, and they're fully discretionary. By using those, we can calculate our internal market share, our mix. Let's pull that, and that's quite important. So let's like that. And what we'll have here is each year we'll have this starting share of revenue fixed with F4 multiplied by 1 plus our ramp. So in the first year, it's going to be 15%, and it's going to grow over to 35%, meaning that when we launch, on average, we'll get 15% of our customer base to use the new service, and we'll grow that to 35%. The next thing we need is also our dollar per client uplift percentage. This is by how much we'll be able to increase the billing amount for the client that opts in to use our new service. Let's copy the formatting from here, and this will be an assumption. In the first year, we'll get 75% uplift, then 125, then 150, 160, and 175. What this is saying is that instead of them paying $100 in year 2026, they'll pay 160 more. So they'll be paying 260. And then we can calculate a mixed uplift based on those two, which is going to be our total mix and dollar per client uplift. We'll bold it, make it look more important, and let's color it in yellow to highlight it a bit. And it's going to be our internal market share mix multiplied by the revenue uplift that we're applying to this portion of our market. And just fix that a bit. So what we're saying is that by rolling our solution to 15% of our existing customer base and uplifting the revenue we're generating from these same customers by 75%, we're overall getting an 11.3% uplift on our total revenue. Copy that to the side. And now we can calculate our revenue uplift, bolded, formatted, and it's going to be the sum of our revenue streams multiplied by our percentage. However, we didn't adjust for something that's usually quite typical for launching a new product. So we're seeing that this 100 million from our acquisition pipeline in 2023 will get the uplift. But this is the year when we acquire these companies. So it will be pretty hard to acquire them and right away implement an entirely new solution. So maybe what we can do here is we can make sure that we're only taking acquisitions from their second year. So let's adjust this formula. This will be the revenue minus the revenue in year one. And we have that all the way up here. That's revenue in year one. Now, if we copy this over, we'll see that the 100 million that we're acquiring in 23 only comes into play in 24 when it's grown by 7.5%, and the 100 million that we acquire here only comes into play in 25. And that's a much better way to look at it, because it's pretty hard to believe that we'll be able to acquire a company and straight from the get-go implement a whole new solution. So with this adjustment, we arrive at those numbers for revenue uplift across our revenue base. Next, let's calculate our EBITDA margin percentage on the uplift only. This will be an assumption again. And this new product, we expect that it's going to bring quite better performance in terms of EBITDA margin. So we're starting at 30, we'll grow it to 35 for 2 years. And then, because probably there will be some competitors that come up with something similar, probably experience some margin compression. So we're reducing the percentage. The next thing, I can just copy this here and say EBITDA uplift. Calculate the revenue uplift multiplied by the EBITDA margin percentage for the uplift, and we get our additionally generated EBITDA. Next, we want to calculate our cost of sales assumptions, and you can just reuse what we did in the acquisitions pipeline. Just grab this whole thing for the cost of sales assumptions, paste it over here, make sure that we relink to our common size for our cost of sales assumption. And our cost of sales will be equal to our cost of sales common size, but multiplied by our revenue uplift. Copy that to the side, and our gross profit will be equal to our revenue uplift minus our cost of sales. After that, we can calculate our operating expenses. Again, we can reuse the structure from here, or just grab our calculate operating expenses and operating expenses assumptions, paste them over here. I'll relink the gross profit, copy that to the side, and I'll relink the EBITDA, which would give me the operating expenses. I can get rid of the prior to transaction costs because there are no transaction costs here. And next, I need to relink the operating expense assumptions, again, to my common size calculations that we did before. Copy that to the side and copy it down. And let's also add a taxes assumption. And we can just set that at 35%. Similar to what we've seen with our core business. Now we've calculated quite a lot of things, so let's start linking to our income statement. So we have our revenue, and this is just going to be the revenue uplift. The idea is that when we aggregate this with the other tabs, we'll get the uplift on top of the other revenue. Copy that over to the side. We have our cost of sales calculated here. Give us the gross profit, and we have our operating expenses. I'm going to fix that on the row and multiply it by our salaries and benefits percentage. Copy that to the side and copy it down. And we have our income statement up to EBITDA. Probably notice that we copied this section from the acquisitions pipeline and we didn't have a taxes line here. And the reason for that is quite simple. We forgot to include it. So let's just go and adjust this, add a taxes line, copy the formatting here, just make it an assumption in percentages, 35 all across, bold it, and then down in our income statement, all we need to do is to make a calculation, and we'll need an if formula because we want to make sure that our earnings before tax are above 0, and if they are, then we can multiply them by the tax rate. Otherwise, our tax will just be 0. Copy that to the side. And now if we work correctly, everything should still reconcile, and it does, which is perfect. Let's go back to our Minty tools and start working on our cash conversion cycles. I'm just gonna add some space here, and we can actually go to our acquisitions pipeline and grab the cash conversion cycle from there. Copy and paste it over here. And of course, all the references broke. So let's relink accounts receivable days from our common sizes. Accounts receivable days, not sure which year I'm linking, 23. Common sizes, accounts receivable days for 23. Copy that to the side. Same thing for inventory days, common sizes, inventory days 23. And for our accounts payable days, 23. Copy that to the side. Now let's link our revenues. Copy that to the side, and we get our closing balance for accounts receivable. Let's link the supplies for our inventory calculation. Supplies. Copy that to the side, and we get this as well. And our total operating expenses for our accounts payable. Copy those to the side, and we get our cash conversion cycle with the net working capital and the change in it down below. Let's link those three in our balance sheet. Our accounts receivable, our accounts receivable closing balance, our inventory closing balance. Let's copy those to the side. And our accounts payable to our accounts payable closing balance. Copy this to the side. Let's also link our change in working capital. And copy this to the side as well. Next, let's add our property, plant, and equipment schedule. I'm gonna add some room here. I'm gonna grab an orange header. PPE schedule. And again, we'll have an average depreciation percentage at 25%. We can actually reuse this from the acquisitions pipeline as well. Just need this top part. We don't need any cash flow statement effect from the acquisitions of PPE because we're not doing any acquisitions here. Just repaste it over here. And those formulas work at the top. Our depreciation won't work because our reference here is fixed and it's no longer on 209th row, it's on the 84th row. Copy that to the side. And we also need to fix our CapEx. And here CapEx will be an assumption, and so would acquisitions. And we don't even need acquisitions, just to keep it more consistent in terms of formatting and structure. I'm just gonna type in 0 all the way here. And for our CapEx, let's say that we would spend about 2 million per year to support this new service. And that's our PPE schedule. Let's link everything that we have from here. So first we can link the depreciation in our income statement with a negative sign because we're showing them as positive numbers down below. Copy that to the side. We can also go to our cash flow statement right away and link our depreciation and amortization here. Copy that to the side. Next thing, we can link our CapEx in here, investments in property, plant, and equipment, and it's going to be with a negative sign because here it's a cash outflow. And we can also link the balance in our balance sheet, PP closing balance, this one as well. And the only thing left to do here is to build our equity schedule. And once again, we can reuse that from our acquisitions pipeline. Just grab the equity schedule, paste it over here. And all we need to do is link our current result from our income statement. Copy that to the side. We're not doing any dividends. And now we can link the retained earnings closing balance and the dividend payment in our cash flow statement. So first, retained earnings in our balance sheet. And then in our dividend income or payment, just gonna link the payments from here. And we can also link our cash and cash equivalents to our cash flow statement. Copy that over to the side. Something else we haven't linked is our taxes. If we come up here, we have our taxes here. So I'm going to do the same thing that we did with the acquisitions pipeline. If this is above 0, then we want to apply the tax rate to the earnings before tax. And otherwise, just give me 0. Copy that to the side. And now something else we haven't linked is we need to link our net earnings in our cash flow statement. Go up here, net earnings. And there you have it. So everything zeroes out here and here. Our model is ready. So we made some high-level assumptions about how this new service would leverage our existing customer base. We have a twofold uplift that we're generating. We applied the same concepts of using the common size for expenses and cost of sales, our cash conversion cycle. We added some CapEx assumptions going forward and calculated our 3-statement model down below. The best part about this is that the way we built this model, it would always match whatever config options we choose, because if we exclude an acquisition or the whole acquisitions pipeline, they won't be getting any uplift, so everything would still flow properly throughout our whole model. Let's follow a similar approach to what we did for the acquisitions pipeline and have a drop down where you can switch between different scenarios for the performance of our newly introduced product. Let's just grab the whole thing, copy it, paste it here, and then paste it once again. What I want up here is, this is gonna be my selected scenario. I'm gonna copy this, paste it over here, and paste it over here. And I have 2 scenarios, but you can add as many as you want. And that's not options, it's optimistic. And I also have a realistic view. Let me just make those black. Next thing, let's fix our freeze panes, because right now only the top rows are frozen, and whenever we scroll to the side we don't see the line items. Go to view, freeze panes, unfreeze, freeze panes, freeze, and it's going to freeze everything above and to the left of my selection. Now I can go ahead and start fixing our optimistic approach. So this here, what we can do is we can just grab the formula from here, paste it here, grab the second one for Rockcult revenue, paste it here, and grab the third one, paste it here. And now if we just copy those to the side. Everything should work. And also gonna select everything, including the realistic one, and make all those green because they're actually pulling from a different tab. Going down, our percentages here calculate correctly. Our revenue uplift, EBITDA uplift. Then here we also need to relink the cost of sales. So grab the first one from here, paste it, copy it over to the side. And this also calculates our gross profit. We need to relink our common size for the expenses. Just need the first one, copy it over to the side, copy it down. Taxes are okay. Here we need to do the same thing. Copy it over to the side. Same thing here. Copy it over to the side. Everything else should be working correctly and linking correctly. Here as well. And copy it over to the side. Going down, everything here seems to be properly linked. We're getting the same results. So we have probably fixed everything. Just like that, in a few minutes, we got our optimistic approach. Now we need to do the same thing for our realistic approach. We need to relink all those. Here, grab the Rockcult revenue, paste it here, grab our acquisitions pipeline revenue, paste it here, select all of them and copy to the right. As we go down, this is the next one that we need, the cost of sales percentage. The next one was our salaries and benefits. Copy here, copy to the side, and copy down to relink all the operating expenses assumptions. Next one is our accounts receivable days. Then we do the same for our inventory days. And we can also link from here to here, but there's a specific reason I'm not doing that. And the reason is that sometimes in different scenarios, we want to rely on different assumptions. So right now for the optimistic view and the realistic view, for both of them, we're using this common size accounts payable days. But let's say we want to make a pessimistic view where we want to go in here and just make it 20 days for all the periods. And then if for some reason we are changing this into the first view, everything that we linked to it would get messed up. So it's better to keep them fully separated. I think this one is done as well. And right now they're showing the same thing. Now let's fix our selected scenario and add the option to pick between the two. And then we'll play around a bit with the optimistic and realistic assumptions. As before, we don't need anything up here. All the way down to the income statement. You can just delete all those. Then let's add a few lines here. Gonna copy the whole thing just to make everything look the same and feel more consistent. And those are gonna be my settings. I have my options and they will be optimistic and realistic. And then those, bold this. We have our selected option. And I'm gonna color this in orange and give it a border. Then I'm gonna grab the whole thing and give it a thick border so it's more identifiable. Format this as a number. Next, let's go to the developer tab, insert a combo box. Create a combo box here. Right click, format control. And here we want the input range, which is optimistic and realistic. But if you remember, we want those to be with the tab name in front of them. I'm just going to go to a different tab, go to this tab, grab the two, And then for my sell link, the same thing, go to a different tab, go back and grab this link here. And since we only have two options, I'm gonna add two drop-down lines, click OK. And now we can use this and you can see that the value here is being updated. Let's go down and link all the income statement, balance sheet, and cash flow statement lines. So what we want here is, I'm gonna use the switch formula. Our expression is our selected option, fixed with F4. And then if it's 1, we want the 2020 revenue from here. And if it's 2, we want the 2020 revenue from here. And that's our formula. We can then copy it over to the side, grab the whole line and start pasting it everywhere where we have data. Okay, and the cash flow statement as well. And everything should zero out and it should match the optimistic scenario and currently the realistic as well. There are many scenarios where you might want to have different options for a model, especially if it's something that's completely forward-looking. So what we can do is we might have an optimistic view that we want to show to potential investors that are more hooked on the story. And then we might want to have a more realistic view, which is probably more in line with what we've traditionally done before, or more in line with what other companies have experienced. And we may also want to add a third view, a pessimistic view. It's really up to you. You can add as many views as you want. But here, let's just go ahead and say that our realistic view is that this is going to be 25%, 50, 75, 100, 125. And then our dollar per client uplift, we also think it's going to be a bit lower if we look at it realistically. So 40, 60, 75, 80, 85. In some instances, you might want to color those, like the brownish one that we've been using, just to make sure that you see where the differences are. Okay, I'm going to leave the EBITDA margin the same. Costs are going to be the same, expenses as well, because those fully rely on our common sites from our core business. We're going to have the same CapEx assumptions, and those were the only changes. How fast can we grow this portion of our clients that are converted and are using the new service, and as well how much more we can charge them. Now, if we go back to the site and let's look at the income statement, we can switch between optimistic and realistic and see that it's actually quite a difference just by adjusting some of our main drivers for this model. In the next video, we're going to prepare a revenue and margin summary, and we'll add this dropdown and the one from the Rockcoat acquisition so that we can play with the scenarios and have a holistic view of the complete performance of the business as a whole. Thank you for watching another part of the course. As soon as the next video is uploaded, you'll find it right here. By the way, if you can spare a minute, I would love to hear your thoughts on the course and whether it's living up to your expectations. If you're watching on the website, you can do so by the feedback button up there. And if you're watching on YouTube, just drop a comment down below. Thank you.